Hello and welcome. This is Sarah Newberry, and I am with the Woven Podcast. This is a podcast where I am exploring my own soft edges and my deep roots with my friends and with other people that are in similar stories. So today I'm very excited because I get to speak with my friend Shecanna. So Shecanna, tell me and the people listening a little bit about you.
Hello, everyone. I am Shecanna. Um, I am your Midwest girl for a little bit of everything. I am by profession a physical therapist, and I have been for a long time. I was an athletic trainer before that, but more recently, I've stepped into the mother and guardian role and really started exploring um, the self journey, the learning about myself and my behaviors, and added to my repertoire a hypnotherapy certificate, a neurolinguistics certificate, um, quantum time, emotional processing, and just a whole lot more learning and experience in this crazy world as a human being right now. And yeah, I am here for the deep conversations. I'm here for the open and perspective uh, talks. And I'm working on rebranding and putting myself out there as a leader in this world on some of those other topics that doesn't always get discussed freely.
Yeah, I love so you've already got my mind swirling on things. But I wanted to say that one of the things that you first said was being a Midwest girl.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that you and I both connect on because we're both from small towns in the middle of Illinois. And I think it's funny because, you know, um, globally speaking, I do a lot of classes and I have a lot of colleagues across the globe. And there's something they always say like the coast get all of the trends and stuff and it like
Yes.
slowly moves it
And
way.
then it
It
slowly filters to the middle. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we're in the middle of the country and I feel that so true. And sometimes it makes me feel like I'm on an island, which is weird because we're like not on an island. But um I say that because it's like I often find it challenging to reach people in my proximity to have these kind of like deep and really weird conversations. So whenever I find someone like that, I'm always like, will you be my friend? Let's be
Yes.
friends.
Yes. And they're there, but like
Yeah.
you said, it's you're like, I'm in a big city now, like I should like run into these people on a daily basis, and we don't. um and yeah, feeling that connection of somebody on the same same vibe as you is just amazing. So yeah, we really do latch onto that for sure.
Hmm. And I mean, I remember growing up and, I was one of the first people in my neighborhood or whatever to have like the internet. And I feel like that really changed the trajectory of my life in a lot of ways because it really opened me up to all kinds of things. I would spend hours, just like surfing the web to use old terms.
Right.
And whenever I was 16, I had already been researching things like Hinduism, yoga, like alternative health, Ayurveda, stuff like that. And in the small town I grew up in, I was like, there was no one there. There was one person, Nancy Liss, my first yoga teacher, and she still has a very special place in my heart because I mean, she was an older woman even back then, and I still kind of keep in contact with her because she was such a guiding light for me, and she was my first person who introduced me to Reiki, and she knew about that, and like she was always interested in Native American spirituality, and so she kind of like you know, was like, come this way.
Right.
And so it was like she was kind of that one person in a sea of like nobody who understood any of these things. Um,
Yeah, that's
and
amazing because I mean, you found that person relatively when you were young.
yeah,
I feel like I didn't start growing in that until I went to college. I mean, the first time. And so I was, 18 and, moving into an area with some sort of culture, but yet still in the Midwest. So,
yeah,
there's still, it was like baby steps, right?
yeah. Well,
Um,
and I went to college in the Midwest too, and it was like, you expect to have some sort of like experience in college where you
yeah,
really get to like explore, but even in the Midwest, back to that whole like trends on the coast, like, you only have access to so many things.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like you said, you're reading magazines and they're, the hot fashion trends, and you're like, I'm never wearing that. And then what do you know? 5 years later, here we are. Like
Right.
it's finally filtered into the middle here. So, but yeah, like getting to know people. I would say definitely that's when my curiosity, started to peak as well. And I'm glad you mentioned like finding that like one, you know, like guiding light person. That just made me think like who was my first guiding light person. And it was definitely um like one of my college professors that really did uh spark my curiosity. So that asking questions and being okay with it, and learning to just explore other things and not do as you're told, or as you
Mhm.
were taught per se, because we grew up in such a small bubble, um, that like that's just how things are, like that's how we grew up, and that was to be able to like freely explore other options and be aware of like other people grew up different ways. Like I just really had zero, zero experience with that.
Mhm.
So then, to up level a couple years later, I went back to school and I went into the Chicagoland area for that round of schooling, and that was just like another huge bubble, culturally and society and all of that stuff. So this growth can really go two ways. Like you could totally drop into something and just be like, oh, this feels way better. Let's do this, and follow along with that community. Or you can baby step it and be like, oh, I'm aware of this now. How is that going to influence my choices and my behaviors? And um, merging that external stuff with your internal stuff. Like if you get married or if you have a kid or or adopt or even plant moms and pet moms, like it's a whole like new experience, that you can try to draw on those little bits and create a path, so
Well, something that you said earlier, and I don't know if this is true for you, so you can tell me no, or you can tell me whatever, the truth.
yeah,
But you said something about you're on like a motherhood guardian journey, and right after that you were also speaking about like kind of uncovering these other things. I'm kind of curious. I mean, I know for motherhood for sure there is like a rite of passage, an initiation, a threshold to cross. But I'm also wondering if those experiences, both motherhood and guardianship, has like unfolded more, what is this, like spirituality? Like what, what are we, I don't even know if it's that. It's like curiosity. I'm kind of just curious how like those life events sort of made even more curiosity happen.
yeah, super interesting. Yeah, I would say that I've always been kind of a quiet assessor of the situation. I think that's worked really well in the the physical therapy realm, because like I can sit and listen and I can watch and I can kind of start leaning towards some way. And I would say that that really started developing as those lifestyle changes. I kind of joked. I had my son a little bit later in life. I was in my 30s, and so um, I feel like I had some experiences under my belt, but that was an experience I had like that was life altering, of course. So I kind of joked and just said, I don't really know what I'm doing, but like I'm just trying to, not mess them up too bad. And, I kind of laugh about that now because like in reality, like life is life and it's messy. So um when 9 years later, like we worked hard to get guardianship of my nephew. um, it was another huge, like, rocking my world. Like, at least with my own child, I had been around him. I knew his tendencies, I knew his strengths, his weaknesses. Like, you can, as a mom, you can, pick up on tone of voice and behaviors and all of that stuff, and you know how to mitigate. And then, I bring this other child in, and, with all of this love, and he's got a past too. And to figure out how to be in community together, um, at another level of family, like it's another level. Like he's always been my nephew. Um, I've always been his aunt, and there was a, really good relationship to begin with. But in planting him in my home, with our structures and our rules and our behaviors, Tinder's world upside down. So, in turn, flipped my world upside down. And that's really, when I made a major shift in my life to cut back on the physical work. I couldn't, um, I really came to realize with this journey that energetically, I couldn't control the energetics in the house, the energetics at work, the energetics, with friends. Like I couldn't maintain all of that. I was pouring too much out. So I really took a step back in the physical work, going out and treating people and visits and, billing and all of that stuff. And gave myself some grace and some space to work on this relationship at home. And like this is a dynamic of, we went from a three household to a four household, and it gave me a whole new perspective on how some of these moms are doing it with, you know three, four, five kids, and um, let me explore more those relationships too. I had always offered to give other kids rides, rides to practice or rides home or whatnot, but it was just kind of a blanket, like we have a seat or two, like just let me know. I then switched it to, um, hey, I know you've got multiple sports going on. Can I give one of the kids a ride? Or, like more specifically, I would say shoring up those relationships of like, hey, we've got each other, like let's do this. And that's really, really been supportive. And I know you and I have talked about this before. Like moms often don't know that they need that stuff. Like we're taught that we've got to be the strong, independent women. We've got to show that we've got it all in control. And um, we hide the burnout. We don't go to the doctor. We don't take care of ourselves because we are so busy taking care of somebody else and somebody's else and doing all the things that we really lose track. We lose track of ourselves until we hit a point that we have to.
Hmm. Yeah, there's so many good things, so many routes we could take on that. But I think that what's interesting is community. And as a mom of four, I just want to say that the fact that anyone is paying attention to how it could be different for me as a mom of four, is very special because there are so many times that I felt a big shift after 3 kids to 4 kids because it was like now you need a different car. Now you need like you kind of need different accommodations because there's 6 human beings traveling wherever. We went
Yeah.
up to the neighborhood festival last night, where they were lighting the tree and
Yeah.
the Christmas tree and stuff. And
Hmm.
we did the carriage ride with the horse and the little carriage. It was really
That's
sweet.
cool. Yeah.
But because we had 6 people, we had to like wait for an hour and a half to get on this like 10-minute ride. Don't know if that
Wow.
was really worth it. But so then these other families who had like 3 people, they could go ahead of us because they could go with like a family of two, you know.
Yeah.
And it was just like noticeable how like, oh, that family is big. So they
Yeah.
have to kind of wait. And so I'm there's just like a lot of little tiny accommodation stuff that has to happen with that. And I think that or with like so many of us. And I
Hmm.
think that if people were just and I'm kind of surrounded by people who also have big families because that's like actually both of my two of my best friends have 4 kids as well, and they're blended family like ours is, so
Yeah.
there's step parent dynamics, and it's something that we talk about all the time in our like friend conversation is like the dynamics of
Yeah.
step parenting. And I think that what you were talking about with guardianship is like, yeah, anytime you put something different into the mix, it's going to change like it's going to flip everything upside down. And if you don't have that curious mindset and there's like a more fixed or rigid mindset, it's going to be harder. It's already hard, but now
It's
it's going to
already hard.
be
Yeah.
even harder. And I feel like, oh, and then we could go down a whole thing about nervous system
Hmm.
understanding and like one thing, especially with like having a lot of kids in the house, is like sensory overload,
Hmm.
sensory input, and I think um that like obviously it gets loud in my house because there's
Yeah.
just a lot of people. But I also I mean, I'm definitely neurospicy 100%. And
Yep.
so I know because I've been down this road, I have at least 2, if not 4 neurospicy kids.
Yeah.
And so we're all kind of having to navigate and balance like our own needs. So it's become really important to me to teach my kids those skills and tools super duper early. Like I'm going through the diagnostic process with my almost 9-year-old right now,
Yeah.
and the special school district people were super impressed because he can say, "I'm overwhelmed.
Hmm.
It's too loud in here and I need my headphones or whatever."
Yeah.
And it's like, that's because I've needed those tools
Yeah. Yeah.
because
I would
I've
say,
needed them.
I use the word neurospicy also. Like, I feel like at this point, majority of us are neurospicy. Like, and it's not an excuse. Like that's where I think the line gets drawn. Like, we don't want to say that, like sometimes we have to have a diagnosis in order to get certain resources. Um, but at some point, like we're all neurospicy because we all have a history, and some of our experiences are traumatic, and whether those are big huge traumatic experiences that influence our mind and body and spirit forever, or for us in the Midwest even, it's the tiny little micro traumas, like I grew up with farmers, so like like going to the city for the first time was traumatic. Like I had never gone on a 3-lane highway before. And,
Mhm.
so like getting dropped into college in Chicago traffic, like, yeah, that was slightly traumatic, and so it adds up. And we're in this awesome space of like where we're learning these strategies and we can utilize them on ourselves and we can share them with with others. We can share them with our friends, we can share them with our kids. And like sometimes it is very validating to get that feedback. Um, and like I know validation feels good no matter what, right? And like you said, working in these spicy families, um, with spicy people and being spicy yourself, it's hard. And you often feel like you're doing all this work and you're like, where's the success? Where's the happiness? Where's the, like, what is it? Um, and to hear that, and I heard it with my older son, like you were talking about, like being able to voice something. My son just made the transition from elementary school to middle school, and for him to be like, I'm really struggling with the homework responsibility because it's an entirely different approach, from one school to the other. And he's neurospicy, of course, too. So then we can talk resources. And I'm so thankful and grateful that I have worked on all of these things, because as that stuff evolves, I mean, if you think about, like, when you first become a mom, you're like, I'm supposed to keep this human being alive, and I have zero knowledge on this, right? And so you have to turn inward, and you have to rely on your instincts, and you have to rely on your circle. um I mean, it was 12 years ago when I had my son, so like I had a circle of friends that were very helpful at the time, and I haven't talked to them in 10 years, because we moved and changed jobs and all of this stuff. um but like that also reinforces and validates that those people are out there. So sometimes you have to keep asking, sometimes you have to keep looking, sometimes you have to keep working, but also take those little feedbacks as celebrations of like, hey, um, we're really doing the thing. We're being a good human being, and we're teaching those around us how to regulate themselves and therefore be, a good human being also. So, um, that's where the success is. And I just had the saying pop up in my mind, like happiness isn't a place. Like it's an evolution, it's a journey, like you're gonna have these little blips of happiness on your path. But once you have them, you don't stay there, like that doesn't perpetuate. Like you gotta keep on trucking too,
Mm-hmm.
and keep working for those bits of joy and bits of happiness,
Hmm.
and have faith that it's not a checkbox. It's like, oh, here we are, like it's part of life.
Yeah, it's something we also speak about in Mother Circle, right? During the five universal postpartum needs, where in that being a recipe for a good life. And it's
Yeah.
kind of like a roadmap. It's been something really important for me where I think about not only the community and the people I have near me, but also, you know, that connection to nature and like slowing down, moving, those sorts of ideas.
Yeah.
It's a whole concept in and of itself, but that something that always comes up during Mother Circle when we talk about the five universal postpartum needs is that well, my mom didn't get this, or like
Hmm.
my grandma didn't get this, or like I didn't get this. And I think especially mothering in today's world with all this neurospicy stuff we're talking about, and
Yeah.
I too don't think it's a bug, it's a feature.
Hmm.
And I have that approach and I agree with you that like um I think neurospicy is a lot more common than we think, or neurodiverse, you could call it that too.
Yeah.
And like neurotypical is much less common. And we know that now because we're much more connected via the internet and we're seeing like TikTok videos about it. And so it becomes more normal. And so then we can also like live our full expression, I feel like.
Yeah.
So that's a great thing, right? But at the same time, we often, so I'm kind of jumping around because ADHD. Um,
Yeah. I'm following. It's
but
all good.
but the back to the five universal postpartum needs, and what happens in that conversation a lot of times is this like comparison to different generations or
Yeah.
different cultures or different access points or uh, accessibility from neighborhood to neighborhood or house to house, you know. Um, like my parents are dead and I don't live in my hometown. Like I don't have family like some people
Yeah.
on my street have their mother-in-law come over or whatever. And um so I have a different access point, right?
Yeah.
And I think that it's really important when we think about those especially the generation comparison is super fascinating to me
Yeah. I was like, we could
because
totally go down this rabbit hole easy.
yeah, yeah, because I feel like one, our mothers, okay, our now grandmothers, didn't have an Apple Watch pinging all the time,
Yep.
didn't have a constant Instagram feed telling them how they're doing it wrong all the time. And they also had, well, I had, okay, I should say this. My mom lived in a small community. This is so precious and valuable to me, but she lived really close to her sisters, and
Mhm.
they would come over and they would just pick up where whatever she was doing. There was
Mhm.
never like a hey, I'd love to get together. What's next Tuesday like for you? It was oh
Yeah.
hey,
It
I
was
had
not this planning
yes,
or having to like the invitation was very open
yes.
back in the day. Like we
Well,
talked.
and I should also say that we're talking about we both came from small towns. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's part of it too, right? Was it generational or was it small town living,
Location.
culture,
Hmm.
um, or all of it? I don't know. But
Yeah.
I always tell this story because it was always so sweet. But like my aunt would just come over and start doing the dishes if that's what my mom was doing. And
Yeah.
I saw that as a child, and now I see that as a poverty in our culture today.
Yeah.
You know, I was dropping my son off at a birthday party last night, and I was in like a little bit of a different neighborhood than what I'm usually in. And it
Hmm.
was like, I didn't know where I was going, put it in my GPS, you know, and I'm like, wait, my friend Jenny lives in this neighborhood. So I drove down her street and I called her and I was gonna stop by. She wasn't home. But
Yeah.
you know, it was like that that's such a taboo thing to do sometimes.
Yeah.
But I feel so compelled to like, I don't know, bring back pieces of that that I'm like, I don't care if it's taboo, we're stopping by.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same. Like my grandma's house was always open and I was down there all the time and my cousins would come over. My aunts and my uncles were, like in and out and she always had food and she always had circus peanuts and she always had orange Schwan push-ups, like in the freezer. And like there was just that like you were just outside, you were connected with people, and it didn't matter who it was, and it didn't matter what time it was, like it was just accepted,
Hmm.
that's how it ran. And yeah, even, then growing up and we had this kind of cultural switch to safety to where, like it's not safe to leave your door unlocked. It's not safe to let your kids play outside unsupervised. It's not safe. And like we can flip the switch and be like, this physical safety has really been a detriment to our neurological and physical body safety. Like, and we were not taught emotional processing and we were not taught um, resources for how to deal with that stuff. Like, because it wasn't an issue then. Like you said, even our moms that are grandmas now, like they're like, hey, us growing up didn't have 4-inch devices that were constantly stimulating our eyes and our ears and our brains and sending out neurotransmitters. No, we had the sun, we had the outside, we had dirt, like, I mean, again, I grew up out in the country, small town, like we were we were dirty a lot, you know.
Yeah, same.
And now I know that's grounding. And I was like, no wonder I was so happy, you know, like, grounding versus being plugged in and, like really valuing
Do you,
productivity and being plugged in and multitasking. And the research is like coming out now that like multitasking and plugged in is killing us, So, our moms like trying to deal with that. Like, how are you a grandma? And one day, letting them play on their iPads for 2 hours is safe. And then the next day you're like, oh, wait, maybe it's not safe, and maybe it is, like, oh, they are forgetting to eat and they're forgetting to go to the bathroom, and like, oh, this could actually not be safe,
it's
and what does that mean and how do you deal with it? And they don't have the resources.
it's
And
so
like we're figuring the resources out ourselves. So it's like, I don't know, we're,
well, yeah, and in some ways they had the resources built in, like you said, you didn't have all the things. Like would we, I guess the question is, would we need all of the resources if we weren't so being pulled by so many other things? It's so funny because I remember, I mean, when I was growing up, TV was not that big of a deal. Like
yeah.
TV was like kind of on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so funny because now my kids are, they like their devices or whatever. I actually have
Yeah.
one kiddo who is anti-device. It's really amazing. She's gonna be
that's
6,
that's cool.
and she's like, I don't even like watching movies. She wants to
Mm-hmm.
just craft all day. But regardless, I'm over here now going, because I know when we were growing up, there was this big thing about like, don't watch too much TV, it's bad for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I still agree with that. But now these days I'm like, please watch TV. Can you please watch TV? Like
Yeah.
get off the device and go watch TV.
Yeah, 100%. And I do the same thing because I'm like, you put a time limit on there because like, what else are you going to do, and then you do the transition. And then I'm like, put on Disney Plus. Like it's a big screen and it's far away from your face.
Yes,
Body
exactly.
can rest, like you can see it when, and, as a physical therapist, like everybody is here, and
Yeah.
like that is like your heart, everything is closed off and you're hunkered down and you're stiff and you're not moving. And, like, um, even just bringing that small screen from here, or if they're playing games on there, like they're tense and they're in it, but like just bringing that out to a TV that is,
Hmm.
10 feet away and it's big and there's commercials where you can get up and go to the bathroom or whatever. Um, it's that shift, like you said, like that was a different scenario. Again, when we were growing up, you had to go to the video store and you got to pick out, like I got to pick out one video and my brother got to pick out one video, and like that was our weekend entertainment, but it was
Hmm.
still only 3 or 4 hours of watching TV, and then we were back out, doing what we were doing, whatever.
Hmm.
So that shift is there, and us realizing that like we're doing the best we can with what we have right now, and we can't apply those rules, like, I mean we can, but that's going to drain us even more, right? So like if you have to be rigid, with everything, like that's no better.
Right.
Opening it up and being flexible and like being okay with like, hey, let's try this week. And then, like if it works, great. And if it doesn't, like we'll try something else next week. And that's also like something that we like teaching the kids. I think, again, our generation, there was a lot of rules, and like
Hmm.
you just didn't break the rules.
Hmm.
Um, and now like realizing like some of those rules are bunk now. And, um, like what purpose was that rule? Like I have a hard line, a hard wall, with rules and safety, like most like physical and mental safety, of course. Um, but a lot of the other rules, and the kids will tell you, like I'm a little flexible. Like generally speaking, we don't eat at McDonald's, but
Right,
some
right.
days where I'm like, yep, that's the only thing between here and home, and we're having McDonald's today, and the kids are all excited or whatever.
Right.
Um,
And that's great, right? Because
yeah,
like that's like what you were saying about the video stores. Like you don't get to do that every single
you
day. So it
don't do it every
becomes
day.
like an exciting experience. It's a nuance. It's like novel. It's like I want that for my kids
Yeah,
too, you know? And something else I learned through like high conflict co-parenting is like everything becomes an opportunity for a conversation. So like
yeah,
I can't always guarantee physical, mental, emotional safety for my children because as soon as they leave this
yeah.
house, like I
It's out
don't
of your
know.
control.
And so, therefore, everything has to become an opportunity for a conversation. And I feel that way about all the devices and the screens and everything, where it's like, so, like you said, screen limits, time limits, whatever. It's like, okay, you had an hour. Now, how does your body feel? Or like, how are you feeling now? Here's your hour of time. Then what does your body feel afterward?
Yeah,
My one spicy kiddo is just like really struggles with getting off the
yeah,
screens, and I mean full on tantrum, and I could see that, right, as like, oh, this is just bad for you, we're not doing this anymore. And I've tried that. And I've also like um learned that there has to be there's that opportunity for conversation. Obviously not in the moment. He's like throwing a tantrum and I'm like, let's
right.
talk about it. No, that's not what it's like. But it is more like, okay, once he gets a bit more regulated using all these resources that we have now, it's
Hmm.
like, all right, now what was that like for you?
Yeah,
And there's a lot of times where he can articulate like I'm hungry, or I was hungry, or halfway through I got hungry and I didn't honor that body cue.
yeah,
Okay, that's really important. Like we have to honor our body cues. Like that's how we grow and develop our intuition. That's how we know, like something else you had said earlier about physical safety and just like how can we recognize physical safety? This is a big thing that I've talked about with my kiddos too, is like listening to that spidey sense that's like, ooh, something feels a little weird in here. Okay,
yeah.
like don't override that. Same thing with like you got to go to the bathroom and you're playing a video game, like go to the bathroom, you know?
Hmm. Yeah,
Um because it's like another cue to the body, like I'm listening, I believe you, I want you to keep giving me signals.
yeah. And that's again, it's one of those like signs of the times of, like you and I again making assumptions here. We didn't have to be taught to listen to our body as children. And I think, like that is something that has developed, um, you know, like even asking our children, like we know when they're hungry and they're hangry and like we know their behavior, but like just telling them you're hungry, they're going to automatically argue because they're not in a regulated state, right? They're going to, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not hungry. I'm not tired. And we've all seen it, like, I'm like, oh, um, well, I need to, like we need to run to the grocery store and here's a snack, like grab this in the car. And I know that if I'm 5 minutes down the road, they're going to eat the snack and they're going to fall asleep, right? And then they're much better afterwards. But like, a, it's interesting, like this, and whether that's the neurospicy things or whether that is just a sign of the times, like they're seeking the dopamine high, or they're seeking the easy way of feeling good, which is plugging into a device.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to like reteach them that like connection is the happy part, right? Like you can
Mm-hmm.
also get dopamine with a connection or with a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
um and like I feel like I'm my older son, because like he's been on this journey with me for longer. Like he's starting to recognize that now. But with my nephew, it's still a work in progress. Like he frequently, even we had the snow day the other day, and he was outside playing with friends, and he was having a blast. But guess what? He ate nothing. Like it's not because it wasn't available. It's not because we didn't remind him to eat, but he was having so much fun that that overruled everything else. And so it was like 3 o'clock, and like we're getting ready to go to practice, and he's like, um, I could tell. I was like, what have you eaten? Like, did you have your Lunchable? Did you have your whatever? And he was just like, oh no, I had a hot chocolate at the neighbor's house, and I'm like, oh, okay. Problem number one. And then, like how to address that without keeping them in that fired up state. Like you said, it's the, you know, creating the conversation. I didn't preach to him and say, dude, you had to eat breakfast and you've got a new, like this is why you're, all this stuff. Like that would have not been received, right? So I was like, okay, well, let's start with this, like something that's fast and easy. Jello. We have Jello left over. Like, eat some Jello, and while you're eating that Jello, I'm gonna fix you an actual like some food. And he's like, I'm not hungry, and I'm like, I know, you know, but this is what we're gonna do. And finding that balance and stuff, and then the next day I was like, hey, you know, how did you feel at practice last night? And he was like, I was tired. And I was like, yeah, why do you think that was? And he was like, I probably didn't eat enough. And I was like, probably, and so like being able to have those little snippets of conversations, you know, we just have to have confidence that that's going to add up later. And them being able to do that, because like the last thing I want is these boys to be, like 22 and, going out and working all day long and not eating anything, because like they don't get the signal, or they don't recognize that, like they feel like crud because they haven't eaten, or they stayed up all night, on watching TV or whatever. um but totally a sign of the times of like listening to your body.
Hmm.
And on the flip side, with us too, one of the big things was emotions. Like 3 years ago, emotions weren't allowed. So like I had to figure out where my emotions were in my body, and like get out the emotional wheel and figure out that I have more than just six emotions, because um I just didn't do it. I wasn't taught that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely been known as the mom who will just shove food in your mouth.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like, uh-huh,
Uh-huh.
like just
Mm-hmm.
shoving it in their mouth. Um, and I'm also like, they know that I'm very body centered, health conscious, and anatomy focused. So a lot of times
Yeah.
I'm talking, when we're in a regulated state, talking about how proteins and sugar and carbs work together, because I think it's wild to me, and I don't mean this by any shame for people, okay? Because you
Yeah.
just don't know. But it's wild to me that so many of us are walking around this planet really not understanding how this body works.
Yeah.
And I see that all the time in my practice. And I mean, for a long time, I've always said my ideal client is someone who is curious about their body and how it performs at its optimal level. And I'm not talking about like athletics per se. It's like,
Right.
how do I how do I stay healthy? Like that's the kind of person that I love to work with, because even with all of the stuff I know and all the courses and all the education that I have, I'm still asking that same question. Like, how do I be the best, most healthy version of myself? Um, and what is my motive there? To like live longer, but not only to live longer, but to live like more like
Like
with
fuller or more whole.
yeah, like joyful, like
Hmm.
not in pain. Growing up, I watched a lot of people in pain and
Yeah.
suffering, and I don't want that. I want to live as healthy as I can. So, I guess that's like I'm just always trying to educate my children from that perspective of like, this is your body, this is how we know it works today, because we also know that all that stuff changes a lot.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm kind of curious, because I know we kind of need to wrap up a little bit, but I'm kind of curious if you want to tell me in just like a couple of minutes, how do you feel like energetics, nervous system understanding, mothering, because I feel like being a mother has informed so much of my work, and my work has informed so much of my mothering. It's kind of like they go together.
Yeah.
Um, I'm kind of curious how all those things together kind of make you who you are, but also you as a professional who you are.
Yeah. So I was just actually thinking, that's a lot, that curiosity about body and wholeness and wellness and health, um, is I bring it to my practice a lot because um, a lot of my clients are coming to me with a physical issue. And while we're working on that, I'm able to like delve more into um, faith and emotion and things. And because you build that rapport with them. And then professionally, I think it's part of my job, or part of my superpower, whatever you want to say, to open that curiosity, because so many people get stuck in something, because it's not the way it used to be. So, my 94-year-old lady, um, was, like I got stuck on the floor. I just slid off the bed and I was on the floor, and she was like, I just thought I could get up and I couldn't. And she's like, and she was like, I was so frustrated and I had to call somebody to come in and help me and all this other stuff. And I was like, well, good job calling somebody, like, thanks for not laying on the floor all night long, like, step one, great. And I go, you can get up off the floor. And she was like, I couldn't. And I said, okay, let me help you, because as a 94-year-old, she had never gotten up off the floor. Like, her brain was like, you get up off the floor by getting on your hands and knees and you just stand up, right? Because it's still living in that 70-year-old brain that was what she did, and now she's in a 94-year-old body. And I'm like, we can do this. And so, like, we've practiced it a couple of times. And like, I even videoed it for her to show her kids because, like, they don't want to freak out either. But I'm like, they also find it kind of unbelievable. Like, after she got stuck on the floor in one session with me, now she can get up. And I'm like, it's not just rolling over, getting on your hands and knees and standing up. Like, you scoot over to a chair. This is how you do it. You lean here, you move this foot here. And, like, there's a whole process of doing it, but it's different than you've ever done before. So you may not intuitively know that. So, like, that's where I come in as as a professional, on multiple levels. Like, I have a good superpower of, um, listening and building a rapport with somebody and understanding their situation from their point of view, and then giving them options to open up and explore other things. And, I may be working on them manually, but then talking about what's stressing them in their life, and letting them put, those words out of their body and into the universe, for processing and things. And so, just opening up that curiosity that there are some, right now, there are some changes. We can use the experience you had before and, those type of things. But right now, it helps to have somebody else with that perspective, so like, that's where I come in,
Hmm. Hmm.
is that perspective and that awareness, and being able to voice that to somebody, in a way that, one, they're asking for it, and two, they're receiving it, and having that communication, like you said, the opportunity to go back and forth and not just boss people around and give them, a cookie cutter routine. Like, that's, like, something that's really functional and personal and, like, successful for them.
The further along I get in this life, I keep thinking, and it keeps showing up to me, that having one piece, well, like one linear education doesn't really serve most people. And so, like, I love that you're kind of like, I approach this from like a very manual physical place, but there's all this like other stuff happening that if I'm not attuning myself to those things, I'm not serving my client in their
Yeah.
fullest potential. And I mean, I know that about you, and I know that about me too. And I know that when I meet a good professional, whether that is, I mean, okay, don't open this rabbit hole, Sarah, but
Yeah.
like, isn't that the problem with Western medicine? Where, like, I go see a cardiologist, I see a rheumatologist, I see but they're looking at it from their lens, which is like that's beneficial, right? I'm
Yeah,
glad that you know everything you need to know about the heart as a cardiologist. But if we only stay in that linear view of helping someone, are we really serving them? And like that's a slippery slope, right? Because you also have grifters and you have like really problematic people who who say a lot of things that aren't true or
yeah.
you know boast that they can do all these things and they can't. And so it's interesting. I do see that like our relationship to expertise is evolving, which I'm totally here for that.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means exactly, but like I'm here for the conversation, you know? But I just feel like, and I guess it goes back to that intuitive body and being able to like sense a grifter, sense a problematic person and move away from them.
Well,
Um,
yeah, and like you're reading that and being aware that like that may be true from their view of the world, but that doesn't make it have to be true for me. Um,
right, right, right.
so like,
That's
yeah,
maturity too, you know?
yeah, yeah, and um, like you said, everybody has their filters and everybody has their superpowers, but like understanding the limitations of that, and I think, like you said, the pendulum is swinging a bit. Like people are getting really really frustrated with our healthcare system. Like the system is broken,
Yeah,
um, but yet we have to utilize it in some form or fashion in order
right,
to do anything.
right.
And the I think the art of healthcare and the art of being a healer um, was kind of lost for a while. And I think we're like getting back into that, and like that's amazing. And I think that's where we need to go. But there's still a large bridge, that we
Yeah.
gotta we gotta build and walk.
My beloved doctor who delivered all my children, she retired this year in 2025 and
Mhm.
um it was basically because of that. Like the
Yeah,
art of medicine has deteriorated. I mean, also age, also insurance bulls,
yeah,
baloney, you know, all that stuff.
yeah,
But I love that you see on the horizon the potential for like renegotiating that relationship with medicine, health as art. I think that's beautiful. Um, all right, my friend.
yeah. This was fun.
Yeah. Um, I hope that you have a great rest of your day. This conversation has like percolated something in me already, so I'm gonna move this through the rest of my day, and I hope that um, is the same for other people as well.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'll do it anytime. I'm here for
Awesome.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a great rest of your day, and let's go out there and do the fun stuff.
Do the fun stuff. All right.